Good.
Welcome to Sharing Soulful Stories. Today I'm here with Tahlee Rouillon. Welcome, Tahlee.
Hi. Hello. Thanks, Jo. Thanks for having me.
And let me just tell you a bit about Tahlee. Tahlee is a music composer extraordinaire and the founder of Sonesence. She creates sonic sanctuaries for empaths and sensitive souls through her soothing meditones music. When heard with headphones, meditones create calm brain waves effortlessly, perfect for sensitive souls struggling in an overwhelming world. You can grab a free track below. We will share that at the end. The link will be there to experience the bliss for yourself. And you can also find Tahlee wandering about the forest, eating good food with good friends and hanging out on Instagram a lot. So welcome. Thank you for joining us today, Tahlee.
Thanks, Jo.
So I have invited you here to add your story to the various stories that we've had today in the hope to open people's ideas of what spirituality is. So I would love to ask you, what does spirituality mean to you?
Oh, such a great question. I've been really thinking about this a lot ever since you invited me to this series. And I think for me, at its essence, spirituality is about what does it mean to live a good life? I think spirituality answers those really big existential questions, right? Like, who am I? Why am I here? What's my purpose? What are my values? How do I want to live in alignment? And how do I want to be connected to myself and also to something greater than myself? And that could be community, that could be God or spirit guides or whatever you want to call it, but not just focusing inward on, who am I and why am I here, but also who am I here to serve and how can we take care of one another.
I love that. That's a beautiful description. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. So from that, I hear that your own sense of spirituality, you feel confident in how your experience of spirituality is. And I wondered if you could share with us the story of how that's unfolded across your life, any highs or lows or ahas that stand out that you'd love to share with us.
For sure. So not a lot of people know this, but I actually grew up in a very religious household. My father was a Baptist minister and I grew up with a Christian faith. Right up well into my teens, I believed in Christian faith. I identified with Christianity. It was, as you can imagine, being the daughter of a minister, religion and faith was woven deeply into our everyday lives. We said grace before every meal, went to church every Sunday. I was involved in a lot of church activities like youth groups and music as well. And, sang in church choirs and did concerts and all sorts of things. So very, very much steeped in a spiritual life. My parents also, when they moved out of ministry, moved into really charitable organisations. So they still really much, they had the hearts of servants and they went into child sponsorship agencies and working for African choirs. And then eventually, just before my dad retired, he was also a chaplain at a major hospital in Queensland. So really seeing how their faith was a very practical part of their lives still influenced me, even though I lost my religion in around sort of 17 to 18 years old. I was very much a seeker. I had lots of questions and I really felt like Christianity couldn't answer all those questions for me. And so went through a really big spiritual seeking phase of trying to understand, well, if I don't believe in Christian faith, then what do I believe in, and what's important to me, and why am I here, and why are any of us here, and all of those big, like I said, all those big existential questions. And so through that journey, I think for me now, you know, spirituality, I suppose my faith, I guess, if you wanted to call it that, or my philosophy, my guiding sort of light for spirituality is probably a combination, I would say, of Buddhism and democratic socialism. It's really strange, but I kind of feel like for me now, this kind of arc of spirituality and politics, I think, is very, very, very important. And as I said, my parents really influenced how spirituality is played out in a practical sense. And so for me, because my political values are, very left-wing, I suppose, very much steeped in, we are all one, and we all deserve love and belonging, and we all deserve our basic needs being met, and, we need to take care of one another. So really understanding how can I bring spirituality and, my spiritual values and my political values together to, really be of service. Yeah.
Wow. I love all of that. And it was, as you say, I didn't know that about you, and I wasn't expecting politics to come up in these conversations. But but actually I think that the way you described that is so at the heart of what I believe too, that the oneness and everything that you just said about politics. And yet I've probably put that in I don't really do politics box. But as you say, to really affect change, we have to stand up for what we believe in, sort of in the real world, as well as doing our inner work to represent that in our sort of lives as we come forward. So what I feel would be really useful for people, though, is if you could talk us through how spirituality actually sort of looks for you on a daily basis in your work, in your life. Like, what is it that you feel makes your life one of spirituality as a spiritual person?
That's such a good question too. I would say it's really for me about aligning my values with my actions. And so it's understanding, like you said, what do I believe in? What do I want to stand up for? And, for me, again, spirituality is that kind of almost like that Venn diagram of like the microcosm and the macrocosm. Spirituality is about how I connect to myself. And so I do that obviously through meditation, journaling, things like using oracle cards or energy work to really tap into that beautiful, wise, still present part of myself, and learning to love and accept all of the parts of my own humanity. And so really not trying to separate, ego and spirit, or not trying to separate, good and bad, but understanding that I am human and I'm flawed, but I'm still lovable and I'm still worthy of beautiful things, as we all are. We're all very complex and nuanced. And for me, that microcosm of turning inwards reminds me of the really beautiful, soulful, nourishing parts of who I am as a person. And then when I've connected to myself, it's then about how do I use that, those good parts of myself? How do I use that calm? How do I use that resilience to serve? How can I align my personal values and my spiritual values so that everybody wins? so that we all have a seat at the table. And that's social activism. And that for me is really also part of spirituality. I can't now separate the two. I see that, you know, the work that people do in charities and political organizations to try to help everybody live a good life, that to me is just as spiritual as meditation or connecting with spirit guides or energy work. Yeah.
Oh, I love that this idea has come up, because I think it will really resonate with some people in the service that that they're bringing just in their choices and their actions that they do and make. And one thing I feel quite strongly with, that I'm not perfect at, as you say, we're all human, is this trying not to make anybody else wrong in the process. That as you said, that there's this way, let's be open to the possibility that everyone can win here, you know, that everyone can be supported, that and be open to the possibility of those solutions. Let's play with ideas. How can we get from where we are now to what might sound ridiculously idealistic to a lot of people, but without visualizing or dreaming about that, how can we begin to look at what changes would need to be unfolded to get there? So I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Oh, thank you.
Sorry, did you want anything else to add along those lines?
Oh, no, not at all. I think you summed it up perfectly. Yeah.
Beautiful. Wonderful. So the other piece that I would love, because you've touched on these beautiful ideas of going within and then how you bring it forth into the world. Is there any piece of advice that you would give to people that feel ready to get more curious about spirituality and what it might offer them? What advice would you have?
My sole piece of advice as a seeker myself is to be very discerning, extremely discerning about where you get your information from, how you implement that information, and how it aligns with your values. I keep returning to this word values, but I think it's so crucial. If you are seeking a life of fulfillment and joy and purpose, and you're curious about how do I go about doing that, being really clear about, like, what is it that you stand for, and the people who you are seeking information from, you know, how are those people aligned with your values too? Because obviously there is so much information out there, and there are so many different ways to lead a spiritual life. And being open-minded is a beautiful, wonderful thing. Curiosity is a wonderful thing. But also being very discerning about, you know, thinking deeply, reflecting about what that information might mean or what those actions might mean. Especially in the overall picture. I think sometimes spirituality can get quite selfish, like it's a little bit too much navel gazing. I know that I've spent, you know, a long time. I can get kind of really caught up in my own head. And so to really understand what the purpose of spirituality is and how you're going to then take action to align those thoughts and beliefs and rituals into your life, and then also the impact that you're going to have on the world too. Yeah.
I love that. That's really great advice, because as you say, there is so much out there. And when you're early on this journey, you know, there can be a lot of sort of sniffing around. What is it that's out there for me? And at times it can be tricky to know, is the resistance I'm feeling, which I know not everybody gets a felt sense, but that gut instinct, you know, is that fear of going any further, or is that actually, this doesn't feel right to me? You know, really listening in and starting to say to yourself, okay, does this feel like a good fit for me? Beautiful advice. Thank you so much for that, Tahlee.
Oh, you're welcome.
So we've only really just touched the surface of all of this today. But if people want to find out more from you and more about your beautiful music and work, where can they go to find you?
Absolutely. So my website is sonesence.com. That's SONESENCE. You can grab a free meditones track. Meditones are just, they're everything to me. I've been working with them for nearly 20 years. Oh God, that makes me sound so old. But yeah, I love them. They are part of my spiritual practice because they really do help me feel so much calmer, so much more grounded, so much more confident and courageous and resilient. So yeah, that's the work that I do. And yeah, you can also find me on Instagram as well at sonesence_music.
Perfect. Thank you. And I'll put all of those links for people below. And yeah, meditones track. I encourage people to download one. I love Tahlee's meditones as well. But I had no idea that you've been doing it for 20 years. Wow, that's amazing.
I know.
That's
oh my
amazing.
gosh.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here with me and making the time to share your story. I feel the more of these stories we get out there, the more open people can be to exploring it for themselves. That's my hope anyway. So thank you so much for today.
Absolutely. Such a pleasure. Thank you, Jo.
Bye for now.